Hi folks, welcome back to another video. So this time around we are going to be doing a bit of a product review. The folks over at Nova3D have sent over to me a bottle of their Tough Water Washable Resin. Now this stuff is supposed to be strong, it's supposed to be flexible. Is it going to be? Let's find out. Let's do some testing.
Now, just before we start getting on with the printing, I just wanted to run through kind of the issues we have with regular resins, whether that's water washable or ones you would clean with IPA. So here is an action figure that I made a little while ago. Now I used water washable regular resin on this. Now on first glance he looks okay, the arm sort of moves, not too bad. I painted him up obviously. The problem I had though, and I didn't realise it until I sort of went back and had a look recently, is one of the pins on the leg over time has just snapped, as you can see there. In fact, the rest of the pin is still stuck in the leg joint. What this is a case of is essentially over time the actual resin has just degraded. It's just not strong enough. There was too much pressure on that pin in that leg, even though it wasn't even being, particularly used or anything. It wasn't actually being moved. Over time, it just obviously developed a hairline crack and went. Now, this is the problem. Even I wouldn't say water washable resin is particularly delicate. I mean, I think it gets a bit of a hard time online. A lot of people seem to think that it is, overly brittle. I don't think it's any brittle than any other resin, to be honest, if you get your settings, your printing settings correct. But all types of resin ultimately aren't that strong. They're absolutely fine for making statues, models, that type of thing. Anything with moving parts, anything that needs snapping together, it just isn't going to work. Now I made a slightly bigger figure. I was testing a Luke Skywalker, so here is the year old actual action figure from back in the day, and I thought I'd 3D print one to make it a little bit bigger. Again, started having problems. I started painting them up and trying to work out exactly how to do this. But ultimately, even with the pins that were bigger, over time, it just snapped very quickly, in fact. And that's the thing, even if you sort of get working parts in, after a while, if you see here, the resin against the resin, it just kind of crumbles away, essentially. I mean, the types of plastics that you used for action figures, toys, that sort, they're very much, I think they're sort of oil based in their construction, so they're slightly almost gummy, and they have that sort of bend and everything in them, so they're basically the right material for the job, whereas resin isn't really going to work for anything with moving parts or anything that needs a bit of pressure on them. So that's the issue we have. So the mission with this is, will this Tough Washable Resin solve all these problems for me? Will I be able to make things with moving parts and actually, have a much tougher, stronger resin? So, should be straightforward. Is this stuff strong? Is it going to do the job or not? Let's find out. Okay, so I'm just about to pour in the resin, and as you can see, my FEP is completely clean. I have just this second finished replacing it. So this is a brand new FEP, so the test couldn't be any more, I guess, unbiased. So let's put a little bit in here. I'm not going to go too mad for the first print. So what I'm going to do for the first test, I'm going to keep the settings that I have on my printer normally. I always use water washable resin. You can see I've got boxes of the stuff over here. So I'm just going to keep the normal settings that I would use on any water washable and see how we get on. Okay then, moment of truth. That's the first test print finished. I only did a couple of little pieces, and yeah, they seem to have come out okay. So that's good to know. So now I can go off and print off a few more little bits and pieces and take a look at this properly. Right, it's playtime now, so I've got all the parts printed, all cleaned up and dried, so now it's time to see whether they're going to work or not. So for the first test, I just simply want to take and compare what regular resin with this new toughness resin. So this is a lightsaber. Remember Luke, it was his lightsaber. I've sized it up, but it's just a good way to demonstrate the differences between the two. So this is regular water washable resin. This is any cubics. So as you can see, it does have a bit of flex to it. This is what I was saying before. I think water washable resin gets a hard a bit of a hard time really, because it's not that brittle. However, it does of course have a breaking point. So let's take the tip of the lightsaber and let's see how far we can bend. Okay, that didn't bend very far at all. So this is again regular water washable. So as we know, this is the problem. Let's do the middle of the lightsaber as well, just to make the point. So how far can I bend it before it snaps? Again, not particularly far. Okay, fine. So that's the problem. Now let's see, can we solve that problem with this resin? So here is the test. Now I haven't done anything with this yet, so we're going to find out together. So let's do the tip first. Will this snap? Well, look at that. That's pretty good. I can bend it. Wow, look at that. I can actually bend it 45 degrees. It hasn't snapped. It's doing pretty well so far. Let's see how far we can go. Okay, past 45. Look at that. I can bend it all the way around. Well, there you go. I can bend it all the way down. Look at that. I have to say, I'm pretty impressed by that. I thought it was going to have a bit of bend, but I assumed it would snap. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we snapped it in the end. So the stuff isn't indestructible by any means, but it's a hell of a lot tougher than, this stuff. So okay, let's carry on. Let's see if I can snap the lightsaber in half. Obviously, this is a bit thicker, so you would think it'd be a little bit stronger, but we'll find out. Okay, so that's 45 degrees angle. What am I talking about? 90 degrees. There we go. So I almost bent it completely 180 there, just as at its breaking point. So there you go. It is pretty tough. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this stuff isn't designed to be indestructible. It is just simply designed to be tougher than regular resin. And it is supposed to be able to bend, and it can. I mean, you're not going to be going around bending things that far, are you? But yeah, so okay, so actually, you know what, that's working pretty well. That's just to illustrate that point. So I printed off a couple of Star Wars weapons for the action figure that I had previously made before that I showed you, and yeah, I mean that's the type of flexibility you want, really, isn't it? That's perfectly fine. You don't want it to bend any more than that. You're simply not going to do it unless you're trying to break it. Same with something like this. I mean, this is obviously a very fragile part of the gun here. And yeah, look at that. See, it can bend. You wouldn't have been able to get away with that with regular resin. Okay, so let's take a look at a mini then. So I think probably the type of thing people want to be using this resin for mostly, or printed miniatures, it's going to be things you're actually going to be using, isn't it, in every day. So I printed this little Goblin fella. I just found it as a free download. So I chose him because he's got a couple of delicate things he's holding on to. So he's got this axe here. Now that is a prime example of a thing that would snap immediately off if you're trying to use this, playing a game with it, and you just nudged it. So there we go. That's very thin, and it can bend. There you go. You can swivel all around. Again, this isn't going to be indestructible, although saying that, it does actually bend quite far around. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it snapped in the end. So yeah, I think that's pretty good, to be honest with you. I mean, if it was, the resin would behave very gummy if you were able to, completely bend it without it ever snapping. So on the whole, that's not too bad. The other thing I think people often think is if they drop something on the floor, it's just going to shatter into a million pieces. So let's do that test. We're going to drop this on a hard surface. So here is my tiled floor, so it's a very hard surface. I am 6'6", believe it or not, so this is the height I'm going to be dropping this guy from. I'm going to drop it from head height. Here we go. Well, it certainly bounced. And he's in one piece. Yeah, nothing snapped. Okay, it passes the bounce test. So, bounce test is completed, so we're quite happy that if we were to drop a piece whilst playing a game or something with our miniatures, they're not going to shatter into 1,000 pieces. So, again, I think it has passed that test. Now, before I said I wanted moving parts, I wanted action figures that can actually move and not crumble over time. So let's build this guy and see if we're successful. So this is a pretty tight fit. Now, given how tight that was to get in there, had that been regular resin, I would have snapped that, trying to push that piece in. Because again, these pegs, how they work, they need to sort of be pinched a little bit to go in. There we go. Alright, so have two arms in. They can rotate. They feel pretty good. They're very firm, but it doesn't feel like, I can't hear any cracking or anything. So let's spin them around a few times just to. So if they were going to break, they would have broken, by now. So I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on this. I'm trying to break it, essentially. Okay, so let's remove one of the arms back out. So you can see the resin dust came out there, and the pieces did start to crumble a little bit. They did, as the parts were rubbing against each other, they were grinding down. Now, that's probably to be expected. Ultimately, I guess, if this resin was too strong, you wouldn't be able to sand it down. So, I don't know. Maybe this isn't going to be the answer for action figures. I don't know. We'll have to see on this one. Let's clip the rest of him together. Okay, I've stuck him together. Getting in one of the legs was a little bit tricky, but I got there in the end. So, yeah, as I said before, he seems to work okay. He feels much better. He feels a lot sturdier than when I made one out of sort of regular resin. Yeah, see, that sort of thing keeps happening with regular resin. This stuff, yeah, it's much better. Much better feel, sticks together much better. It's not grinding down quite the same way. So, now another problem actually you have with action figures is trying to get weapons to fit in their hands, because invariably they're never designed very well. The accessories always seem to be too big. So you have to sort of bend the fingers. Now again, you've got a little bit of flexibility with this type of resin. So, get his staff in his hand. There we go. And we haven't snapped the fingers. Now again, with other figures I've tried to make in the past, I have managed to snap the fingers the second I shove a gun in that hand. So let's just stick his gun in his hand. Yeah, not the greatest to fit, unfortunately, but I think you get the point. There we go, it goes in there. I haven't snapped his thumb off. So I think for an action figure point of view, I think it's doing pretty well. I mean, this is a fairly small figure. If you did a bigger figure, I think you would obviously have bigger joints and everything. So I haven't made the test easy, put it that way, by choosing the model that I chose. So one last thing I wanted to do is, again, expand on the moving parts idea. So we've seen that you can sort of slide something in fairly rudimentary, like a pin inside a figure joint. But what about something that actually has gears? So this is a print that I have downloaded. Again, I'll put the link in the description for this one. It's quite a cool idea. I think it's intended to be printed on a FDM printer. It's not really intended to be put on resin because of the moving parts. But with this type of resin, hopefully, that's a thing of the past. So we have a face, and then we have a skull underneath. So you've got gears on the side, and then if you push it up far enough, there should be a click as it clicks into place, and then the head can't go down. Now, that alone, having a mechanism that had a click into place, you wouldn't have been able to do. You would have been terrified every time that clicked. Now, I have been playing with this quite a bit before I started filming this, because I was keen to sort of put this through its paces a little bit. Now, I did manage to break one of the gear teeth. So if I pull this section off here, you can see, oops, there we go, I have a handy pointer. There was a tooth there that has come off. And in fact, that tooth has ground down a little bit. Now, This isn't the greatest of design because those teeth are actually pretty small, to be fair, so there's a lot of pressure on this mechanism. But again, I mean, it illustrates that yes, this stuff isn't bulletproof by any means, but it's certainly a lot stronger than any other resin that I've used in the past. This would have been unthinkable to try and build with regular resin. I think you'll agree. And as I said, I've tried to sort of, really put this thing through its paces to see whether it's going to work or not. And yeah, it does. And you can see by the printing quality as well, and that's probably something I haven't actually talked about yet. The printing quality is spot on. I can't see any difference between this and any other resins I've used in the past. So yeah, it absolutely prints fine. Okay, so talking about the printing. So I didn't change any of the settings on my printer. I ran a test for a couple of little small parts, as you saw, and they came off absolutely fine. Now, the reason I did that, I was expecting that to fail because I have seen a couple of other people out there who have used this resin and they have experienced problems. The pieces were snapping off the supports. I can only assume it's because I'm used to printing with water washable resin that my support settings and everything are probably a little bit more keyed in to using this. Now, the folks at Nova3D did actually contact me to ask if I had any problems with the printing, and they sent over the recommended settings. Now, I didn't have any problems, and I told them that. And funnily enough, a lot of the settings I had to say were quite similar to the settings they had. Apart from one exception, they recommend that you have a 6-second rest time between layers. I haven't got any rest time set on my printer at all, so it's set at 0. If you did put a 6-second rest time on, what that means is an additional 6 seconds is going to be counted every single layer. So that would make quite a big difference to the printing time. So just something to be aware of. But as I said, it wasn't a problem for me. Mine worked without that and just with my regular settings. So again, for me, it passed the test on that one. So in my opinion, for what it's worth on this resin is actually it does the job. As I said, it's not indestructible, but it isn't supposed to be. It does have a flexibility in it which no other resin has. It is water washable, so you don't have to obviously use horrible chemicals to clean it. And the print quality is absolutely spot on. So yeah, I think it does what it's supposed to do. Now I'm going to go off and tidy this print up. This is the raw print. I haven't done any tidy up at all. And yeah, once I've tidied it up, I'm going to come back and I think I'm going to paint this guy up. After a fairly rudimentary paint job, this is the finished result. Now I've sprayed this with a couple of coats of varnish as well, because I figure anything with moving parts and anything you're going to be touching is going to take a lot of wear and tear. So obviously varnish is the way to go, just sealing all the paint, make sure that you're not going to take it off with your hands, and also that the joints won't rub it off together. One disadvantage of that, as you will see, is that the chrome has actually now gone like a gunmetal grey. I kind of realised, or I kind of figured that, you know, the varnish would have an effect on chrome, but Didn't realise it'd be quite to that extent. But nevertheless, it still works, so I'm happy with it. Anyway, getting back to whether the resin has done the job, it still seems to be holding up. So obviously, as I say, a bit of varnish will help with, certainly with the gears and the joints, that type of thing. But yeah, as you can see, it still works. It still clicks into place. Nothing is breaking or anything like that. I did just slightly alter. I just basically sanded down a little bit where it was rubbing in a couple of places just to make it easier, but beyond that, it's absolutely working and it is doing the job. I mean, obviously time will tell how many times, eventually will the plastic wear down, but for the time being it seems to be perfectly fine. So yeah, pretty happy with that. So, in summary, I think this resin does exactly what it is intended to do. I'm pretty happy with it. The last thing I haven't talked about, just because I forgot about it until now, was the actual price of this stuff. Now, just looking on their website, it is currently down at £26 a bottle, which isn't bad. I mean, that's not a bad price for any type of resin, really and truly. So something that's actually tough washable resin, I think that's not a bad price at all. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate this video is a little bit different to what I normally do, but I think it's nice just to see what sort of products are out there. I hope you got some benefit out of that, and I will see you in the next video. Rah.